What's the creepiest thing that you've seen other families do that they accept as totally normal? My family collected dead people cards. When my grandparents would go to funerals, they would get those obituary cards with pictures and stuff and collect them. I think it started out as getting them for memory purposes, but then they'd get them for other people. And it became like a card game. My grandparents and their friends would trade them, and they coveted the ones that had misspellings or limited edition more. Like his one man's name was Hayes, but they misspelled it as Hazel, and the ones before the funeral home reprinted them were kind of showed off as a novelty. I didn't realize it was weird forever. And mom's still in denial that it was weird. We had to throw out boxes of dead people cards when my grandparents died, and their still living friends actually got mad that we didn't distribute them again. WTF. I'm seeing a lot of overly affectionate families here. But my buddy gets to me with his lack of affection. Rather than mom or dad or something similar, he refers to his parents on a first name basis. It's Doug and Karen. When asked why, he looks at me like I'm a crazy person and responds, "Those are their names?" I don't know why it threw me off so hard. The weird thing is that as an adult I have reason to use my parents' first names. But it always feels weird. I call them mom and dad to their faces. But say my father and my mother when talking about them. My grandmother finds this weird. But she finds most things she doesn't do weird. She questions why I call her daughter my mother instead of mom. It's just more professional. I'm willing to out myself and my family. One day my then girlfriend, now wife, witnessed us putting sliced cheese on our donuts. Her face was disgusted. I was not aware other people don't do that until that moment. Also, it's delicious, so save your protests. Edit. Since everyone asked. Just a regular glazed Krispy Kreme donut and a slice of American cheese. Now for the twist. The cheese is cold. My family was that weird family. From like 3-7 I would only wear my underwear when I was home. I felt free and comfortable that way. So as soon as I'd get home from anywhere I'd strip down to my panties, and it didn't matter who was at our house. Be it my friends, my siblings' friends, relatives, or friends of my parent. My family acted like it was completely normal. I'm sure people thought we were weird as hell. Not that creepy. But my ex-boyfriend used to call his mom whenever he was stressed so that she could assure him that everything would be okay. He used to send her messages like, "Is everything going to be okay, Mom?" And she'd reply with, "Don't worry. You'll be okay." He was 28 at the time. He also gave her all his passwords so she could access his bank accounts and take care of his finances. And he got sent to a really cool destination for work for 2 weeks and spent the entire time moping about how much he missed his family. I love my parents and all. But come on. Sounds like he had some pretty bad anxiety issues and his mom should have sent him to the doctor. Yes. I agree. He did eventually seek help with this stuff. Though I don't know the outcome. The thing that bothered me was that his mother never encouraged him to develop the skills to handle these things. She just took care of everything for him without question. There was a weird kid in my neighborhood named Neil. He had a club foot. That's not what was weird, it's just sort of memorable. Anyway, we were invited to his birthday party down the street. His parents sent invites that we were to bring a present and $10 to cover the costs of hosting the party. My mom was annoyed and confused but sent us with the presents and the money. We had to give the money to Neil's parents before they let us in the house. We were each given one water balloon to throw. And exactly one slice of cake. Then we gave this kid his present and his parents sent everybody home after maybe half an hour. I have an ex whose family would literally burn any meat they cooked for dinner. Chicken, fish, steak, all completely burned. They were terrified about bacteria on their food. I got them to cook my steak medium well, less burned. But still above well, once, but I got some serious looks of disgust. The mother also forced me to draft a living will and instructed me on the proper way to seal a room to protect from a very likely chemical attack with duct tape and plastic sheeting. I know a woman who was a manager at the restaurant my wife worked at who was living through her 13-year-old girl to an extreme level. The girl would come up to the restaurant from school and her mom would trash her for how shitty her makeup was and ask her how she expected to get Brent or Jason or whoever looking like that. 90% of what she talked about with coworkers was her daughter's school drama. She would read her texts, give her strategies and things to say, etc. Always trashing her appearance or telling her she needed to dress sluttier before going to the football game and weird shit like that. Talked about how she encouraged boys coming over and how she liked to spy eavesdrop. And with a twinkle of pride, told us how she walked in daughter's room recently and found her coming out from under the covers in her bed this boy was in. Right in the middle of a possible BJ. I was 16 dating a 14-year-old and this could easily have been her mom. She was always trying to get us to FCK. Basically made rules that meant the only way I could see her daughter was to spend hours in the girl's bedroom. Just a girl and me. And yeah, we usually ended up in bed. But this was the 90s and we were taught that having sex would lead immediately to pregnancy and death by HIV/AIDS, so we usually just spent hours between third base and home plate. But never scored any runs. Because, you know, pregnancy and death. We had a family friend whose dad would take cuddling and kissing with his two daughters to another level. Like they're both in college now and they still sit on his lap, cuddle up and kiss him all over, cheeks, neck, lip pecks, etc. All in public. It's not the first time I saw something like this, but it's probably the worst case. Something that I have witnessed for years only began to hit me as the realization slowly unfolded. A family that I visited frequently with all adult children who still live with their parents would coincidentally always have the same exact movie on every single time I visited. They all huddle around as though they are only watching it for the first time. Once, when I actually stayed over for a longer duration, when the movie finally ended, the TV was finally turned off only to be turned on again and the play button was then pressed for the same movie. I finally realized that this movie is watched multiple times a day. Every single day. Almost like a ritual, and all the members of the family react the same way to the same scene repeatedly as if they have never seen it before. Edit. For all those asking what movie. It was called Just Ask My Children. I went on vacation with my buddy when we were kids. They weren't religious, but before every meal they would all say the same chant about being a better person and trying your best. It was really creepy because they would all say it in the same monotone voice. It turned out the mom was just tired of everyone eating before she got to the table, so she made up the tradition. I think this is hilarious. I can almost picture her laughing inside as they reluctantly monotone their way through their little chant. That'll teach the little fuckers to wait for me. Double quote. Definitely has to be my neighbors when I was younger. I hung out and played with these three siblings. They were all pretty normal kids. But the mom seemed kind of clingy. During the summer we would play outside a lot. Baseball, hockey, go-karts, swimming. The norm. Every single day at about 12. The mom would call the kids back to the house. One at a time. They would have to go inside for about a half hour. Then come out and the next kid would go in. Never thought too much about it. Until one day I was actually in their house with them and found out why she called them. She had mandatory cuddle time with each of the kids. They would lay on the couch. And she would spoon them. In the quiet. For about 30 minutes each. Weirdest thing I've ever encountered. Edit. No. Her name was not Beverly Goldberg. My senior year in high school. I lived a town over, so I would have to get a ride to and from school. Didn't have a license. That ride was always from my 50-year-old uncle that has been living off of my family since 2009. One day on the way home, we are driving down a road that has like a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. I glance over at my uncle and he isn't even watching the road. He's looking somewhere off on the sidewalk. I notice we are about to drive past two girls that couldn't have been older than 13. I think to myself, there is no way that this is what he is gawking at. We start to pass them. And sure enough his head turns as we pass them. Looking back at them. I go, "You're a pedophile." Double quote. This man says, "Not yet." Double quote. A friend from high school theater used to invite me over to her family's house all the time. Her mom collected large vintage dolls. Like child-sized ballerinas. Victorian girls. And this one overly happy clown. They'd dress it up in their own clothing and place it around the house like it was a family joke that it was alive. They also collected and played didgeridoos as a family group. It sounds cool. But they were all pretty odd individuals. I went to a friend's house and we put some cartoons on. While we were watching I asked him a question but he didn't respond. He was fixated on the TV. Absolutely glued. His childminder just laughed, "Oh, he'll be like that all evening now." So I just had to wait for my parents to pick me up whilst he unflinchingly watched TV for hours. My sister is like this. As soon as a TV comes on she gets so distracted she can barely make comprehensible sentences. She has a PhD. She runs a medical lab for cancer research as well as owning a nutrition-oriented produce delivery service. She is literally trying to cure cancer, but as soon as a TV comes on around her she gets all confused and distracted. It's hilarious actually. My dad just loses all sense of the outside world. I've screamed at him from about 3 feet away and nothing. It'd be impressive if it wasn't so f***ing annoying. And creepy. I am told it is a little disconcerting at first. But people warm up to my very mixed family. Here is the background. Both of my parents have divorced parents that never spoke to each other and never wanted to be like that when they divorced. So we have large family get-togethers where all my siblings and all my step-siblings hang out with my mom, dad, stepdad, and stepmom. This includes international vacations, various birthday parties, and Valentine's Day. We just all get along and we are from a small town. It's especially helpful because last year my stepmom was paralyzed from the chest down and my mom helps take care of her. The act itself isn't creepy. But I was very creeped out until I realized what was happening. I was at my so's house. And her mom was cooking and said, "I think it's about that time." Immediately the entire family, mom, dad, and 6 siblings, started simultaneously mumbling something I couldn't understand. After they finished and saw the look on my face, my so said they just said grace. But everybody is in a rush to eat, which is why I couldn't hear what they were saying. I thought they were going to sacrifice me. Bless us the Lord for the gifts which we're about to receive from the bountiful crystal orderman. My family says this in one breath before dinner family meals. It's considered bad form to have food in your mouth while mumbling it. But mostly because nobody wants to hear that. My aunts were teasing each other recently because they realized that most of us don't actually know the words. We learned it as or before we learned how to talk. And just know the sounds to make. Not the actual words. Edit. I f'd up the prayer because I don't actually know the words. An old friend's mum was completely paranoid that Al-Qaeda would storm the small British town they lived in. Her solution? Have a massive bomb shelter built under their house. Not the weird part. Though. About 5 times a year. She would spend literally thousands and thousands of pounds on groceries to stock the shelter with. By this, I mean she would genuinely buy out the whole supermarket. It would take her about 20 trips over a week. Not just canned food, but perishables. 2. I only found this out by sleeping over on one of her shopping days, where food covered literally every single surface of their massive house. My friend just shrugged it off and was "Oh, yeah. Just restocking our bomb shelter. We always need to be ready for invasion. Da fuck." I knew a girl in high school who had parents who were obsessed with dinner plates. They had such a huge collection of collectible plates in their house that every room was full of them on display. Their entire house was basically a library set up for these things. Her bedroom was a mattress on the floor surrounded by display cases of plates. You couldn't even lean on any wall. They were all like this. The last time I went over there I knocked one off the wall by mistake. I caught it and it didn't even break, but my god, the rage her dad flew into was f***ing horrifying. He was inches away from punching me. Never went back. They tried to nervously laugh it off like haha, good ole dad being funny, hahaha. The one time I asked my friend why they had so many, she went on a passionate tangent about all the cool plates they had and why they were so awesome. It went on for an hour. I never asked again because hearing about neat dishware for an hour was like torture. Edit. I just looked her up on Facebook. She works now as a Tupperware consultant. Seriously. Went to a friend's house when I was 17. She asked her mom for a snack and her mom brought out a huge raw white onion completely slathered in mayo on a plate and she and my friend just went at it with their forks like it was filet mignon. 3 years later and I still think about that shit from time to time. Sounds like a pretty good strategy. Actually. Get your kids accustomed to eating super inexpensive, weird shit. Like raw onions and mayo early on. Save a ton of money on food. Dad. You want some of my mayonion? Double quote. No thank you. Son. That's your special snack. I'll just have these nasty Doritos. Double quote. There was a family of girls I went to church with and none of them were allowed to cut their hair. They had to wait until they were 16 so they wouldn't get a haircut they'd regret, because the mother had. They also weren't allowed to talk at the dinner table. One time one of the daughters was laughing at something and coughed on her food. The mom was afraid of one of them choking and dying. So talking was banned. No one told me that when I came over for dinner. I just talked and they all stared at me. Saw my friend's dad. Like 13 years ago on Halloween. Pull his 20-year-old daughter Tiffany over his knee. Took down her Spanx. She was a zombie cheerleader for Halloween. And give her like a real angry dad spanking. It was so weird. A 50-something father of 5 giving his adult daughter a punitive bare ass spanking. In front of me. My buddy. And their other daughter. We were all 15/16. Did she allow this willingly? Cause that's like assault. I was a teenage boy. I was more focused on friend's hot older sister butt and not the social implications of adult relatives spanking one another. My sister dated this guy in high school for a couple years. He had the biggest helicopter parents in the world. He would call to see if my sister was around. And then his whole family would show up. Mom, dad and sister would be with him. It was almost like they were going somewhere and dropping him off. Except they would come inside and crash in the living room for hours while they waited on him. I felt so bad for the kid cause he was 17-18 YO and his parents would third wheel him everywhere. I was about 7-8. I used to play with this girl that lived a few houses down and across the street. I live in a cookie cutter. Very safe and fairly decent neighborhood. Across the street from the high school. Her mother never let us play outside because there could be a drive-by. Any car we see driving by could be someone with a gun and could very easily shoot us and kill us. She never let us play in the living room near the windows either for that same reason. Another time I was over there playing with my friend. And the mom pulled me aside. She pointed to a truck she saw parked outside my house on the curb, my uncle's truck. She told me that it's actually probably a burglar and he was inside my house and killing my family at that moment. She wouldn't let me go home either for the fear of me also getting killed. She finally let me go home after my mom called later and requested I come home for dinner. That family is still crazy. Even 13 years later. The father would walk around in his underwear after work. As in, you couldn't come to the house and ring the doorbell. Because the dad would be pulling a Breaking Bad and be in underpants only. They were a weird kind of super religious where you couldn't sing It's Raining. It's Pouring. The old man is snoring because they thought it insulted God. I was quite young when we were friends with their kids. So finding out the underwear thing was really bizarre for me. No one in my house did that. I knew a guy who was the oldest of 12 children. He was 20 at the time. He told me that a few months after his mom would have a baby his parents would go on a hotel date and when they did, all the kids would get excited and talk to each other about if he's gonna get her pregnant. And then they would all bug the mom about it until a few weeks later when she would announce she was pregnant and all the kids would be so excited about it. I had a classmate from 6th through 8th grade who had a childhood that I view as terrible. She's really successful now and just graduated law school and everything that she posts on Facebook seems to indicate a happy, full and interesting life. But geez Louise was it weird to see her family mistreat her back in the day. I barely know where to start. But her mom was absolutely determined to make her this weird sort of Victorian prim and proper lady. One day, she came in with bruises on her arms and she told everyone it was from volleyball practice, but I didn't buy it. She asked me to dance with her at the school dance a few months later and I just flat out asked her what happened to her arm that day. I think she wouldn't have told me at all had she not been flustered by my direct way of asking, but she told me she forgot her math book at school and her mother knocked her around a bit. She once told me she got grounded for a month because she had written the name of the cute guy of our class and her mother found it when she had gone through her notebooks. Her and I were choir kids and the only ones in the school who took voice lessons. So when we went to ISMA, we sang level 1 songs at the local high school and I ran into her mother screaming at her in the hallway. Apparently, during her piano solo, she hit a wrong note and got a second place ribbon instead of a first place, which meant she couldn't go on to the next level of the competition. I tried to comfort her but she wouldn't listen to me and would only congratulate me that I had gotten a first place on my vocal solo. The crazy thing is that she has 3 siblings. 1 older and 2 younger, and they're all the most down-to-earth people you could ever meet. I asked her younger sister what was up with all these crazy expectations for my classmate, like being required to be fluent in French by 5th grade and taking ballerina classes 3 times a week, but her face just went ashy and said we don't talk about that. She was the sweetest girl ever and I was convinced at the time that she didn't know how to say anything mean against anyone. I think about her all the time. Not creepy in its entirety, but the girl I was dating at the time. I went to church one Wednesday with her and her family and apparently speaking in tongues was just everyday stuff for these people. The personal prayer time started while the service was ending. Then all of a sudden everyone starts mumbling to themselves in what I'm guessing was a different language. Reminded me of Steve Carell's part from Bruce Almighty. Pentecostals can be a little creepy. I went to a church where it was normal during the sermon for the spirit to move over the congregation in the form of wild forced laughter. The preacher, mid-sermon, drops to his knees and starts speaking in tongues. Then the women in the back rows started cackling and the laughter moved through the crowd. Cackling. Belly laughs. Giggles. Even the children did it. I never went back. I've never really understood kissing kids' parents on the mouth. In my opinion that crosses a boundary. But I guess not everyone thinks so. To each their own. Edit. Okay guys. I get it. You all kiss your parents on the mouth and that is normal for you. We didn't do that in my house when I was growing up and I personally find it a bit unsettling. That doesn't mean you have to share my opinion. I was answering the question with my opinion. Is it bad for you to kiss your 2-year-old daughter on the mouth? No. Do it if that's what you want to do. I won't when I have kids, probably on the cheek until they reach a certain age. But that doesn't mean you have to do the same thing as me when you have kids. You don't have to think it is creepy or weird or like it crosses a line. I'm not telling you how to live your life. When we were in high school, my best friend's dad did some seriously creep stuff. When we were 13. He gave her a large diamond engagement ring and told her she was forbidden to get married until she found a man who could buy her a nicer one. WTH. We were 13. We didn't want to marry anyone. We spent most of our time playing N64 and riding bikes. When everyone started dating, she wasn't allowed. Finally she was very excited and said her dad had had a vision from God that she was allowed to date now. I'm religious. So I'm not knocking religion. But dude. That didn't happen. Came to a school dance and pinned the boy she was dancing with against the wall. Police were called. Dad was banned from school campus and all school functions. Even graduation. Her mom never said a word that I heard. My friend was embarrassed by it. But more in a OMG. Dad's. Lol way rather than a WTH this is creepy as shit way. She had 2 brothers. And they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. Growing up my best friend's family didn't have traditional snacks like fruit roll-ups, gushers, etc. They ate sticks of butter. Sticks of F-king butter. Whenever they offered me some I always told them I wasn't hungry. They had multiple packages of butter in the fridge and freezer. They didn't consume the entire stick, rather would cut off pieces. They weren't poor. They weren't fat. But they were f***ing crazy. A white woman. With 2 white sons. 2 adopted young black children and no husband used to come into this fast food place I worked at. The mother and sons looked straight out of the 50s. Her adopted children did not look as well kept. She owned a popular Christian pizza buffet in town. They even printed Bible quotes on the napkins. The sons would come up. Order the same thing every time. Same for the mom. Same thing every single time. She would always point to her adopted children and say, "They don't need anything. Please don't give us anything for them." We once paid for 2 kids' meals for them. She was furious. Close bracket. They would return to the table and would demand we bring them their food. Seriously. It would sit there for 20 minutes if we didn't bring it out to them. They would pray, eat, sit there for ages and leave. The black kids always looked so sad. I never understood why she refused them food. Edit. To everyone telling me I should have reported her. I know this. I didn't know she owned the buffet until the last time we saw her. I was 20 at the time. And I didn't even know where to begin. The children weren't malnourished or bruised. If I were to see this now, I would report it. It is abuse. And it's horrible. I'm late to the party. But I want to share anyway. I once went to my friend's house for her birthday party. I was middle school age. The family was super weird. All the walls were painted these horrific pastel colors. Also, every single room had at least one photograph of Jesus. If not multiple. Anyway, we're all hanging out at the party. And the mother comes up to me and very sternly tells me she would like a word with me. First she was mad at me because we do not swear in this house. Okay. But I said geez. Second, we do not frown in this house. But not frowning. If you weren't constantly smiling, you were in trouble. Jokes on those weirdos. Because my parents bought that house several years later. We didn't even realize it until after the fact. We curse and frown all the live long day. FCKU. MRS. Shepherd. Not sure if this is creepy or just flat out disgusting. When I was about 14 or 15 I would go over to this girl's house. I am also female, and we would hang out. Blah. 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 One day she came out of her parents' room with something in her mouth. At first I didn't realize what it was, but once she sat back down on the couch, I saw that it was a f***ing vibrator in her mouth. I kind of flipped tea and asked her what the hell she was doing. She said her gums hurt. So she was massaging them. The bad, sad, disgusting, weird thing was that she didn't even know it was a vibrator. She found it in her parents' room one day and thought it was for your teeth gums. On top of that, her parents knew she used it for that purpose because they walked in and talked to her while she had it in her mouth. I didn't go back.